Okay, well, guys, I'm Terry MacArthur. It was my great privilege to be one of the steering committee members who started the Heartwood chapter all those years ago. I can't believe we're celebrating 20 years. It's hard to believe it's been 20 years. I've been a certified continuously master naturalist since 2001. I started out in the Gulf Coast chapter. And so we were meeting at the Bear Creek Ag office down off Highway 6 in that big Bear Creek Park. 27 of us lived in either Montgomery County or the very north part of Harris County. And after we'd all gone through training and all been in the chapter for a while, it was like, why are we doing this to ourselves? So we spent 2 years going through all the steps, securing some partners locally, getting some programming put together. We decided as a committee that what we wanted was to engage teachers to the extent possible. And we hoped we could recruit teachers to become master naturalists. So we went to a couple of teacher meetings that were going on in the district here and there and asked them, what would it take for you to attend trainings, become a master naturalist? And they said, I have to back up a second. The Gulf Coast chapter, it was either 14 Monday mornings in a row or 14 Tuesday evenings in a row that they had their classes. Teachers said, no way. That's why this chapter started with Saturday classes. They said, we have to have Saturday classes. And for many years, we have tried to make it 2 Saturdays a month. We've tried different start dates, as you may know or not, but we've tried different start dates. It runs us pretty much through the summer to get all the classes in. But we still don't see a lot of teachers. And yet, the programs we have are so ideal for you guys to put in a box and go to a school and share with a class. So I'm hoping that there'll be some things, especially if you get involved in the water specialist program, that you'll see demonstrated that will give you, I don't know what word to use, the courage to put that in a box, contact some teachers and take it out and offer it to kids, because we're not going to be here forever. Some of us shorter than others. But if we could get kids more involved, you don't need me to tell you that kids in general have lost touch with that real natural world out there. So I think it's kind of our mission as master naturalists, really, to try to reach out to, yes, everyone. We want everyone to think more about personal actions, but the more we can get kids involved, the more we can get kids involved, the better off the future will be. So today we are going to talk water. Today we're going to talk water. We'll take breaks, I promise, but we've got 4 hours to talk about water. So first, let's talk about the Texas Water Specialist Program, since that's what was first up on the agenda for today. How many in here are already working on your water specialist certificate? How many in here already are certified as water specialists? Okay, great. So it's a Parks and Wildlife program. And I'm sure you know well that Parks and Wildlife is one of the state sponsors of the Master Naturalist Program. So it's interesting that there are so many things that your hours don't cross over for. You can't double dip. You can't count it for this and check that box too. This is not one of those. You can take a class, report it as AT hours, and check the water specialist box. You can volunteer on something that's water related, report it as volunteer hours, and check the water specialist box. So it's a terrific program in the ease of getting certified and recertified. So certification is 8 hours of training. Parks and Wildlife wants us to base that 8 hours of training on this book. They send them to me for free. When you come to a water lab, they are there for you to pick up. This is not a water lab, so I didn't bring them for everyone. But this is what the curriculum is based on. This is another A&M Parks and Wildlife combo book. If a lot of the writing in this is from Parks and Wildlife people, but I don't know if you've had a chance at a state conference or something, but Melissa Alderson, the Parks and Wildlife woman who is over the program, does a class on Texas aquatic science. This one is more general about water. This one is definitely a step up on the science side about water. Nothing to do with Parks and Wildlife. This is a TCEQ publication that I really love. It's terrific. TCEQ sends this to me for free. It's all about water. And as you go toward the back, I don't know if you'll be able to see any of this, but there are ID pages for macroinvertebrates, for fish, for plants, aquatic plants. It's a terrific guide. So I always have these at water labs, so you can pick one up if you want one. It's kind of a learn this stuff on your own, but we incorporate some of that into when we do water labs. And some of it to a lesser degree when we do the online classes. So 8 hours of training to get certified. And then the recertification is year after year, and it's 10 hours of volunteer service based on water-related stuff. It's a personal opinion of mine that it's a small fault of the program that they never require you to do any more training hours. So I try to encourage folks like Mike, who has gotten his certification, to still come to water labs on occasion as a volunteer. He can help with some of the hands-on stuff we do. I mean, you know, he also serves who waits. So if he shows up and helps me check in people and does some hands-on project, but he's sitting in the class listening, hopefully, you know, maybe by osmosis, something new we might talk about will seep into his pea brain. You never know. So, you know, I believe in mastering what you know, especially if you're going to volunteer, especially if you're going to talk to others about it. Know what you're talking about. That means kind of keeping up with stuff. And so that's why I say I think it's a small fault that there's no more training requirement after 8 hours, but it is what it is. Because you're master naturalist, you don't have to go through the cumbersome step of signing up directly with Parks and Wildlife. You can report your training hours and your volunteer hours right through your chapter VMS, just like you do everything else. As soon as you start reporting Texas Water Specialist training hours, then that box will pop up every time you report anything and ask you, is this eligible for water specialist? So apparently for training classes as interns, that box hasn't appeared yet. Lisa's gonna try to find out, or Rebecca One is gonna try to find out if Melissa Schubert will add it to your training, because today should count as 4 hours of water specialist training. So we'll have to get with Melissa and try to make sure that that box can get ticked or she can fix it for us somehow. And if you're staying after the lunch break to do the litter audit that we're doing around this building later today, first time anyone attends a litter audit, because we're learning how to do the Keep Texas Beautiful, what they call their stop program. We will be literally sorting and counting every item we picked up of litter. And we report it into the KTB's Texas Litter Database. So it is a true community citizen science project. I let first timers count that as water specialist hours. And it's usually a couple of hours. Because what happens if we don't pick up litter? Next time it rains, where does that stuff end up? It's in a waterway somewhere. So it is truly a part of keeping our waters clean and healthy. So, if you're not staying, that's fine. No harm, no foul, but I hope you will, even if you didn't already sign up for it, I hope you'll consider staying to do that litter audit. If you saw the flyer at the meeting on Wednesday, you know, the only face you could see was Mike's. He's down there on his knees helping sort litter, so you can ask him about that later. And he's gonna say great things about how fun it is, I promise.
It's interesting what you find.
It's very interesting what you find, sometimes too interesting. Yeah.
When is the next formal training besides this one, like, you know, the lab?
The next water lab, you know what? I didn't even bring water lab flyers. It is June.
I don't think you had dates for June, July, and August.
I do have dates for June, July, and August. I think it's a Saturday. It's late in the month. I think it's like the 24th, 26th, somewhere along in there. If anybody has a calendar to see what's late in June on a Saturday. What you can do is 22 or 29. So it has to be 29. On this sheet, that's some resources. If you picked up one of these, is a link to register for Texas Water Specialist classes and volunteering. And if you use that code to go to that registration form, I've updated it with all the dates that are now set and confirmed, and you can find out, but it's late June. That's the best my memory will let me remember. So, okay, you got certified and want to start working on your recertification.
Are all the labs different?
Every one of them is different.
Okay.
Even when we do some of the same hands-on stuff, we don't talk about the same thing. You can ask Michael. They're all different and they're not in any sequence. You don't have to go to this one before you go to it. Well, the only thing that's sequential is once a month on the fourth Monday from 3:30 to 5:30, I do a 2-hour online class. For those who absolutely can't get to an in-person class, it's 2 hours of training. And right now we are in this book. The class coming up on the 22nd is, it's either chapter 5 or 6. Don't make me remember. 5?
Not like doing 3 and 4 all at once. They did that one.
Yeah, we tried to do 3 and 4 together, but both of them are so darn dense. We barely got through chapter 3 in 2 hours. So we had to, the next one had to be chapter 4. This one, I think we're on chapter 5. If you use that QR code and sign up, you'll get a ding in your email, so you better make sure you have me in your emails, because about a week ahead, I'll send you the code for that month's Zoom link. And then a day or two before, I'll send it to you one more time. But it's always fourth Monday, it's always 3:30 to 5:30. So if you've been on the Texas Water Specialist website and you scroll down, you'll see that there's a list of pre-approved organizations that you can get your hours from. It's a fairly lengthy list. There's hardly anything really near us, but the Woodlands Township is on there. And you'll see that it says for pre-approved organizations that you can only get 4 hours of training time from them. However, because of the partnership I've developed with Melissa Alderson at Parks and Wildlife, you can get all 8 hours with me. She knows that I teach from the publication. She knows that I put on the water lab. She knows that I recruit high schoolers to get involved. So she lets you count all 8 hours of your training and all 10 hours of volunteer service with the township. So this is kind of important. If you are reporting training or volunteer hours from something that you attended with me, in the description box, be sure to put the words Woodlands Township. Some people just put my name, but put the words Woodlands Township. That way, if you're more than 4 hours in, you won't get kicked out. But you can only get 4 hours with any of the other groups. What am I forgetting to say, Michael?
Once you do get your specialist training, start getting a lot of calls from Terry to do presentation.
Okay, I didn't mean for you to tell me that. Certificate of beginning. So you'll actually get this in the mail from Parks and Wildlife, a really nice little certificate that says you are one. And this cool little pin. Michael is wearing his on his name tag, but it's a cool little pin that says you are a Texas water specialist. Has a nice little picture of the heron. Not that funny.
I said you buried the lead with the pin. You get a pin.
Yeah. Yeah. If I'd said that, you would have all signed up by now online. I've never known such a group of pin-hungry people. I have so many pins. Well, you think about it, 24 years of certification, recertification, milestones, extra little things. It's like, no, I can't wear them.
It's like,
Yeah. Kind of. So, some of you have created these little lanyard things that you put your pins on. Mine would have to be that long, so. They,
Need one of those sashes like they have for like.
like for Girl Scouts, yeah, I forgot about that, yeah.
Yeah.
Put 'em on front and back.
I wonder if they still have them.
So what kind of things can you do for volunteer service? It has to be water related. The things I offer you are for work. These are all for work. These are all for township. So I partner with all of the municipal utility districts, the MUDs that operate in the Woodlands Township. So there's 11 MUDs. They buy markers for storm drain inlets that say no dumping, flows to nearest waterway. They buy the adhesive to attach them. And our agreement is they buy the materials because their things are like $6 a piece. And I recruit the volunteers to install it. So typically the way it goes is either a group gets together and says, we want to do a storm drain marking project, or an individual reaches out and says, I'd like to install storm drain markers in my neighborhood. And so I'll create a map depending on who it is and where they wanna be. Supply all the supplies. Go out and meet with them. Usually I'll reserve a park pavilion or something nearby for us to stage all of our stuff at. And the group goes out, not only installs the storm drain markers, but also go door to door to put door hangers about the drain markers in the neighborhood. Some of these are back there on the table. If you didn't pick one up, it says, hey, did you see, and it's a picture with one of the markers on it. Did you see this in your neighborhood? Here's why we're doing this. But on the back, it talks about pet waste, yard waste, and lawn chemicals as three of the biggies that are creating pollution or contamination in our waterways. So we don't knock doors, we don't ring doorbells. And we don't walk across people's yards. So it's down the street, up the drive, to the door, hang it down the drive, down the street. Just keep moving to hang these in the neighborhood. I get calls from people saying, I got this thing on my door and I want to know more. Well, is there someplace I can install drain markers? I mean, so it's working. On the other hand, sometimes the volunteers, and someone called me yesterday, they were putting down storm drain markers, Jack came out of the house and said, what are you doing? She explained what she was doing, and he said, I don't want that on my drain. Well, it's not his drain. And it's not even his property. But he said, I don't want it on my drain. Don't put it on my drain. And she said, she's told him, I'm sorry, this is part of the task I've been doing to do this. And she went ahead and put it down. I told her, go drive back tomorrow and see if it's still there, because another volunteer told me the same kind of story in a different neighborhood. And they did drive back the next day, and sure enough, the marker had been ripped up. Weird.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't get it. But there are people who think in strange ways about things.
Yeah.
So that's one thing you can do. In a little while, I'm going to offer y'all a choice of some things you could take home. Ooh, and one of them is this. Pet waste bag dispenser. Well, I could just give people this. I could, and maybe they use it, maybe they wouldn't. I was at a park one day, we were doing something else, and I observed this woman with her dog, and she was walking along, and she had a bag of poop in one hand and the dog's leash in the other. And I saw her toss the dog poop into the trees. So, you know, I walked after her, and I was friendly. I was not accusatory. I just said, I'm just curious about why you did that. And she said, well, I had the leash in one hand and the bag of dog poop in the other, and my phone rang. But it's in a bag. It's okay, because it's in a bag. So I said to myself, okay, that's a problem that can be fixed. So I ordered carabiners. Now the waste bag I give you comes on a carabiner. I say, hang it on the handle of the dog's leash. That way you use the bag, you pick up the poop, you tie it up. You can put like a plastic grocery bag right there on the carabiner. So you drop the bag of dog poop in the grocery bag. It's on the handle of the leash. The dog carries his own poop home. When you get to the house, all you have to do is tie up the bag and throw it away. People keep saying to me, I love that it's on a carabiner. I never thought of that. I mean, one guy was like, can I have another one? Because I have 2 dogs and I would like one for each one. Okay. So there's a few of these in that bin. If you have a dog, feel free to take one. You may be noticing that there's also information about dog poop in our waterways. We'll get to that in a minute. But this is something you can do. So especially if you have kids or want to take a group of little Girl Scouts out or something like that. Township has 6 dog parks. Take your lawn chair. Come and get a bag full of these from me. I will let anybody count up to 2 hours of volunteer service time sitting at a dog park, handing these out to people who show up with their dog. I can't make it any easier than that for you. But I have plenty of these. You can come get a bag full if you want to do that. That's one thing. The litter audits. I mean, honestly, we are keeping trash out of waterways. I don't know if you're aware. Last fall, EPA released their draft for a new national strategy to prevent plastic pollution in waterways program. It's only got 3 goals. Reduce the amount of plastic that gets lost into the environment during the manufacture of plastic. Improve ways to recycle plastic post-consumer. And the third one is prevent and remove trash and litter, especially plastics, from waterways and the surrounding areas, and measure what that litter is. That's what we're already doing. That's what these litter audits are. Whether we're on a pathway or whether we're at a drainage channel or whether we're at Spring Creek, Bear Branch, Panther Branch, picking up litter. Gosh, Scout came to me and he said, I want to do an Eagle project. What have you got? I said, well, you tell me whether you already have something in mind that you want to do, because half the time they say, I want to build a bench. And I say, okay, go down the hall and talk to recreation department. And he said, I don't know, I'd like to do something environmental. Got the project for you?
Yeah.
I said, how about we go down where Panther Branch crosses Research Forest? If you're familiar with that area, when you're on Research Forest, you cross that bridge. That's Panther Branch. Lakeside is the street that runs into Research just before you get to the creek. There's a little strip center in there. It's anchored on this end by a breakfast place called Snooze. It's my second office. Anytime I need a meeting, I say, let's go to Snooze. And between Snooze and the street, up top, right there, roadside, is a pathway that Entergy folks who office just past there pick up litter on. But dropping down from there is a big gully. You can walk down the grassy area and you actually can walk all the way down to the waterway. I can't believe the amount of trash. I mean, I really can't believe the amount of trash. We went there 4 times last year. Every time we picked up 20 bags of trash. It's weird trash too. The last time we were there, it included 97 beverage containers and 44 vinyl gloves. Ooh. What does that mean? But the scout wanted to do a project. I said, let's go to that location. Let's pick up litter for 30 minutes max. We will not pick up for more than 30 minutes. Because it's gonna take, on average, about 3 times as long to sort and count as you spend picking up. He got 23 scouts and their family members to come down there that day. Picked up, actually, most of them only picked up for 25 minutes, but the longest anybody picked up litter was 30 minutes. We sorted and counted 100 pounds of litter that day. Think about litter. Most of it is empty water bottles and paper wrappers for food. We sorted and counted 100 pounds. The last time I was there was with a local petroleum company, group of employees who wanted a volunteer day. So it had been like 4 months or 5 months since we were last at Snooze. I said, let's go to Snooze. We went down there. That day, we only picked up 59 pounds of litter. But, we only picked up for 25, 30 minutes. And that was 11 people. So we picked up a little less, so it took us a little less time, and we had a little, but we still had 59 pounds of litter.
And it was still stuff left when you left?
So the short answer is yes. I've tried to talk Entergy, who adopted the pathway itself, up top the roadside, into occasionally veering down and picking up there. Whether they do or don't, I have no way to track. Diane?
So you're talking about picking up trash from waterways and adjacent. Would it count as adjacent if you were in a floodway? Like, for example, something that floods every time we get 3 inches of rain.
So the answer is yes, but adjacent means anywhere there's land.
Okay.
I don't care where it is. If there's trash on the ground, the next time it rains, it's going to go into a storm drain or into a waterway. Somebody tell me, when things go into the storm drain, where do they end up?
Out in the middle of the ocean and the plastic islands.
Eventually, where do they end up in immediately?
Spring Creek, usually around here.
One of the places, where do they end up? Eventually,
Water spot.
storm drains empty into the nearest waterway. Whether it's a drainage channel, a creek, a river, a lake, well, not lakes. It has to be flowing water. The nearest waterway. It's unfiltered, it's untreated, it goes straight to the nearest waterway. That's what stormwater management is. It takes it from building up on your street, so your house floods, into a storm drain, puts it in the nearest waterway so it can flow away. Eventually that water ends up in Lake Houston, in Spring Creek, in whatever's the nearest big waterway, San Jacinto River, in the ocean. So anywhere you pick up litter is a good thing.
Just a quick question. So on our storm drains, are there filters that kind of prevent certain size items from flowing through the drain? Or is it like a free for all?
It's a free for all. There are places, there are cities that put grates across to try to keep the big stuff out. Our department also has a mosquito abatement division. And so come mosquito season, as the weather warms, people will call up the township and say, mosquitoes are swarming all over the, end of our street. We can't go outside. So our guys go out, try to do an assessment of where mosquitoes might be breeding. If you ask for it, they will come with your permission and survey your premises for potential mosquito breeding places. But typically, they start at the storm drain that's nearest. And they, use that big thing and pull the big manhole cover off. You won't believe some of the pictures they sent me of stuff in there. That one had a skateboard in it. One had 2 bundles strapped together of phone books. Okay, somebody got paid to go put phone books on each porch and went to the nearest storm drain and tested them in the storm drain and went back and said, all done, and got paid. I could just see that in my head happening. 2 big bundles of phone books. Who knows how many other storm drains they dropped them into. lots and lots of toys, balls of all descriptions, tons of balls. Empty containers of all kinds, mostly beverage, significantly alcoholic beverage, you know. The kid on his way home who doesn't want mom to know and tosses it in the storm drain. Is that you, or are you raising your hand?
Speaking of walls, you know, we have you don't have neighbors, so we have that bud ditch right along. So we've got the road and that's where the storm drain is, but then we have another intermediate, like raised one with a manhole cover. That one does have these like great things on it, and it kept the volleyball from going down.
Well, good. They're few and far between that way.
Yeah, I thought it was just stuck there, but then I'm like, oh, it's actually got a great.
Yeah, they didn't put a picture on here of it. They showed two different looks for a storm drain inlet like this,
Yeah.
but this is curb and gutter streets.
Yeah,
If you're in some place that the side, front of your house is a swale, a bioswale, the storm drain inlet itself is probably gonna be vertical down at the end at where some conduit runs under the road. So they're different looks that they may have, but yeah, it's,
So how does that stuff being stuck down in that storage drain attract mosquitoes? Like that paper getting wet and stuff like that? They just wanna hang out there, or
in
what's?
in 1 teaspoon of water, mosquitoes can breed. In 5 days, from the time she lays her eggs till the time mosquitoes swarm, 5 days, you can have a problem.
I see. So all that wet paper, they're just down there having a breeding little fest.
Well, okay, there might be one more thing to talk about that is mentioned on here that's kind of significant. You know, the neighbor down the street who has that mow and blow landscaper that shows up. And he mows the yard and then he takes his blower out and he blows all the leaves out of their yard, out to the street, down the street and into the storm drain. Doesn't take much rain at all for those leaves to hold enough water to breed mosquitoes.
I'm that man. I'm that man.
When you put anything, let me put that another way, anything into a storm drain, you are breaking state and federal laws. $25,000 fine for federal, $25,000 fine for state. And depending what it is you put into a storm drain, the potential for jail time at the federal level. Anything. Storm drains are to manage stormwater runoff. That's what they're there for. Woman called me and said, my neighbor was having work done on their driveway. And the cement truck is emptying their concrete into the storm drain. I said, send me a picture, make sure you get the license plate, if there's a name on the truck, time of day. Sent it off to Woodlands Water, who is the local water biller. They forwarded it on to TCEQ, fines were levied, remediation was ordered. You put anything in a storm drain, you've broken the law. So when you see that guy blowing the leaves into the storm drain,
Send it to you.
you can send it to me, sure. I'll forward it on to Woodlands Water and they'll take it up with TCEQ.
So who gets fined out? The person who hired them or the?
So the question is
That's a good question.
this. I talked to my neighbor about this and she said, but they always come on Tuesday when I'm away at work. I said, you pay them, don't you? Yeah. Then you tell them not to blow leaves out of your yard. You tell them if they want to get the leaves off the driveway, to blow them into the flower bed and use it as mulch. She said, what? I said, you know, out there where you have that open area and there's like 4 trees growing in your front yard in that open area and you can't get grass to grow. Yeah. Have them put those leaves around your trees Every single nutrient those trees needed are bound up in those leaves. Picking them up, bagging them up, sending them off. Within the township, when you put those big paper bags of leaves out for waste management to pick up, they take them to Nature's Way Resources where they are made into compost. And then next spring, you go to Nature's Way and you buy compost. Okay, you could shortcut that, save the money. Put your leaves around your flower beds, put your leaves around your trees. If they're on the grass, just mow over them. By the second day after you've mowed, you won't even be able to find those little bits of leaves. Use your mulching mower for that. Don't get rid of leaves. Anyway, she started putting her leaves in her flower beds. So thankfully, it's like that. We have digressed. What else can you do to volunteer? I haven't,
I don't know if you covered this, but if you go from door to door and hang those, was that covered?
yes. Yes, it's good volunteer hours. You can't count that as training hours, but it's good volunteer hours. Yeah,
So I live, right on the cusp of Harris County and, Montgomery County. I'm technically in Harris County, but I could like split into Montgomery County. And so I wonder if our volunteer hours, if we can set up storm drainage stuff, or is that all done something else because of the city?
I don't care where you live, if you are willing to come to the township, okay. I'm paid by the township buys supplies. If you are willing to come to the township to work, your hours count.
Okay.
If you're willing to come to the township to go sit at a dog park, if you're willing to come to township to put it in the storm drain markers. So I'm having this made into a door hanger. I actually expected to have them by today to bring one. And the reason is not everybody accept their dog's food.
I think there's a misunderstanding that it's organic, so it's okay to do that.
And that seems to be the general thought. Well, you know, if the deer can poop in the woods, why can't the dog? Okay, do you feed the deer manufactured food that has pumped full of all kinds of artificial vitamins, nutrients, and no. The deer's eating what's in that ecosystem. When it poops, it's all part of that ecosystem. The dog gets fed other stuff. And the nature of domestic dogs, domestic animals in general is, unless you're very diligent about vaccinations, you know, monthly parasite control, that kind of things. Once that dog poops and the solid part begins to break down and you don't even notice it anymore, doesn't mean there isn't still bacteria, viruses. I mean, a dog with parvo, oh my God, back in my dog person days, I had this one woman who came and complained to me that they'd gotten the kids a puppy. The one that they got last Christmas had died and had parvo. And so this Christmas, they got the kids another puppy and it had parvo. Okay, parvo can live on the wall of your house or in the soil in your yard for 2 or 3 years and still be able to be passed along to another dog. Things like whipworm. Anybody know the life cycle of whipworm?
What one?
Whipworms. Common parasite in dogs. So here's what happens. The eggs are pretty much microscopic and they're passed out of the dog's body in its poop, ends up on the ground, poop kind of goes away. You don't think much about it. you walk into your yard barefoot, those eggs can literally migrate through the pores of your skin into your bloodstream. They circulate for a while they go through several of the instars, get bigger and bigger. Eventually, they end up in your lungs as they've circulated through your body. They end up in your lungs, and think about this. If you've had dogs for years, have there ever been times when the dog had this dry kind of hacking cough, but it wasn't productive? Or have you? Because if you get whipworms and they get into your lungs, when you cough, then you swallow. You coughed it up into the back of your throat and you swallowed it. Now it's in your gut. There are other parasites that dogs carry that work in a lot the same way. And if you think about heartworms, which are transmitted by mosquitoes. And in our climate, every dog has heartworms every month. Every dog has heartworms every month, unless you give them that preventive that kills the heartworm larvae that are growing in their bloodstream. So there are a lot of things that dogs leave behind besides the solid part of the poop that are unhealthy in our waterways. They're unhealthy for fish habitat. They're unhealthy for people. They're unhealthy for other wildlife. Pick it up, bag it up, put it in the trash. There are some who say flush it down the toilet. Okay, I can't argue with the logic of it, but there's this you factor that you. Yeah, it's gonna go through the treatment plan and yeah, maybe, I don't know. The question is, at the treatment plant, what do they test for and what do they treat for? It's probably been somewhere between 10, 15 years ago. I read the report about a study that was done. So these researchers, they went to every major city above X population all across the United States. And they tested drinking water. And they thought what they'd find here and there are pockets where there were, nasties, things like bacteria that cause you to have diarrhea. They really didn't find that. Drinking water was pretty safe as far as the bacteria levels went. What they did find, without exception, birth control hormones, pesticides, and other pharmaceuticals
In the water, the drinking water?
in drinking. At that time, they weren't testing for PFAS. That time, they weren't testing for a lot of stuff. We've added a few things that we test for. If you live in the township or if you live somewhere that you don't have a well, that you're getting a water bill, once a year by law, that water supplier has to provide you access to or mail to you a report from the water testing with the status of the drinking water that you're getting out of your faucet. But what do they test for and what do they treat for? There's so much they don't test for. We're gonna get into a little bit of some of what the professionals are finding in the waterways around here in a few minutes. Texas Water Specialist. Lots of things you can do to volunteer. The card I'm having made, the door hanger I'm having made. What'll happen is our maintenance crews that go out and township hires people whose job it is to maintain cul-de-sacs. So, where you come in the street and there's a little island out in the middle and the street goes around it and all those houses are there and in the middle there's trees and stuff. And so township maintains cul-de-sacs. I keep getting emails and phone calls. It took us 30 minutes to clean all the poop off the mower blades from mowing before we can move on to the next cul-de-sac or get a phone call. So three of us had to take our boots off and scrape them because we were working in the cul-de-sac and didn't see the dog boot before. So I'm having this made into a door hanger. And my list is growing of neighborhoods where I'm gonna ask volunteers to go hang these on the door. And it's gonna be essentially the same as this information, except it's gonna have in big bright red letters at the top, your neighborhood has a pet waste problem. And a plea to please pick it up, bag it up, put it in the trash.
I will say after spending some time with Terry, your walks along the bike paths, in addition to that, will now be an informal poop survey.
Yeah.
that you will take.
And you get to count the bags that someone's hung on a tree branch, you get to count the bags that someone hung on the top of the fence. You get to count the bags that were carefully placed right on the edge of the pathway. They're waiting for the poop fairy to come pick them up. Nobody told them she doesn't exist. So, 2 years ago, you know, I can't tell you how it hurts me to say this. 2 years ago, the township hired 13 people to pick up litter roadside. Someone said to me just a couple of days ago, you know what I like about being in the Woodlands is there's not much litter. 13 people, whose job it is to pick up, but they only pick up roadsides. They only pick up in right of ways. They don't pick up in the parks, pathways. They don't pick up in the green spaces. They don't pick up along the waterways. Most important thing you could do, the most important thing you can do, talk about water quality. I say this a lot. When I was young, there was a commercial on TV, and I think it was shampoo. And it said, if you tell two friends, and they tell two friends, and they tell two friends, talk about local water quality. We're gonna talk about local water quality here in a minute. And I don't think you're gonna like what we hear. I'm gonna ask you, within your circles of influence, talk about water quality, talk about litter, talk about dog food. Bacteria in our waterways, our local waterways, is one of the things that, I don't know, I can't figure out why we would do these to ourselves, but that is a 100% solvable problem. Pick the dog poop up, throw it away. Problem solved. But our waterways are pretty much after every single rainfall, Panther Branch, Bear Branch, are listed with TCEQ as impaired or contact. They're enough of a health hazard, you should not touch the water. So talk about the health of water.
I am a teacher.
There we go, thank you.
Welcome back. Okay, so we have a couple quick announcements. We want to go over next week one more time. So next weekend we'll be at Mercer. Class starts at 8:30, not 8. And we have the opportunity to do a little field trip again after class. This will be over at the Mercer Botanical Center. So if you plan to stay for that, just make sure you bring a light lunch or a small lunch. We're not going to be hiking or anything. It'll just be like a little walk around the Botanical Center, which is indoor. But we will have to do it in 2 shifts if we have over 20 people. So plan to be there until probably 1:30 if you end up in the later group. And that will be really fun. So I definitely recommend it. That means the class will go from probably 8:30 to 1:30. So if that's if you're okay with that schedule, make sure you come and be ready for that. What else? Oh, VMS issues. Some folks are having issues with VMS still. please come and talk to me so I can write down your name, just so we have an account of everyone who, either can't get on or can't find the initial training button on their drop down. Any issues you have, just come and talk to me so we can make a master list of people with issues on VMS. And that goes to you too on Zoom. If you guys are having problems, just direct message me with any VMS issues that you have. And we'll try and get those fixed as soon as we can. And then Lisa, I think, wants to talk about the.
Oh, just a heads up, hi, again, I'm Lisa Houston, I'm president of the chapter. If you have any questions or you just want to come say hi, come see me. But I just wanted to do a shout out for our next meeting. Thanks to you, those that came to the last meeting. I thought it was really good. And we did a little experiment with the owls, mostly successful, not completely, but I think it's a little better. So the next meeting will be in May, and I should have the date right here, but I don't. It's the second Wednesday in May, and we're gonna have a speaker on bats. So this is the lady that, if you remember in Houston, when we had a big freeze that went and got the bats and took them into her home and helped rehab them and things like that. So she's gonna come talk to us. So I think it's gonna be a really good subject. No, chapter meeting.
Chapter meeting.
Second Wednesday.
May 8th.
Thank you, May 8th. So I hope you will all come and or participate via Zoom. I think it's gonna be. So, if you have any questions for me now, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise.
Is it at the same location?
It will be in the same location. It's same Houston State. I don't know if it'll be in room 109 or 1 or 11. We usually get assigned that day, but just look at the sign when you walk in. All right. All right, thank you. And hopefully our cue, Terry will start walking back in. I will give a plug for my invasive species task force. So, I'm the head of the invasive species task force for the Woodlands Green. And that is another way to get your water specialist out.
Okay, where were we? Someone was supposed to ask me something.
Oh, I have some questions from the Zoom. Do you want to do those?
Sure.
So, the first question is, what can we do about the large amounts of trash in storm drains where grocery stores and businesses are?
Well, technically, shopping centers, businesses, strip centers are private property. I don't think they give you grief if you go pick it up. The question is, where do you dispose of it? Typically, when we're at a park or on a pathway or something, when we get done with our audits, we put it in the nearest those big green trash can things for trash. So you might want to, if you can figure out who's the big store in the shopping center, if it's a grocery store or whatever, you might just want to go in and say a word to whoever's the manager on duty, say a group of volunteers would like to pick up litter around the place. And is it okay if we put it in your dumpster and back? If you're going to do an audit, and I hope sometimes you will do an audit, we'll talk more about that later. It would be terrific if you find a spot that is kind of visible to people coming and going in the shopping center. You never know, somebody might stop and say, what the heck are you doing with that trash? Which is a good thing, because it gives you a chance to say what you're doing with that trash. But still, it's probably a good idea to try to figure out if there's some anchor store or a store near where you want to be located, and just let them know we're picking up trash. If it's in a bioswale, then, you know, that's right away. That's not on the private property. So you can pick up trash in a ditch anywhere. Tree lines tend to be edges where private property meets public property meets development property, whatever. You're probably fine there. I don't think anybody's gonna grit you if you're picking up trash. I really don't. But do not open the manhole cover on a storm drain. Do not. If you see that there's a large amount of trash in a storm drain, if you can see that there's trash in there, if it's got a grate on the top or whatever, send me a note. Send me the location, be as specific as you can, maybe bring it up on a map and highlight where you're talking about, send me a map and I will see if I can get it to somebody who can do something about it. San Jacinto River Authority is our local MS4 operator. I mean, they are charged by Texas Commission on Environmental Quality as for management of stormwater. But within the township, those MUDs that I mentioned that all operate within the township, they are the de facto maintainers of waterways. It's the MUDs typically you see if there's gonna be mowing alongside a drainage ditch or cleaning out some area. Township is a funny place. We are not a city, we're not incorporated, we are a special purpose district. Township doesn't own all of the township. Some of the township is still owned by, well, it used to be Woodlands Management, now it's Howard Hughes Corp. So Howard Hughes owns significant portion of the Woodlands Township. And so there are times when we'll talk about invasives in just a minute, but there are times when our invasives task force volunteers say, hey, there's a big problem with Japanese climbing fern over here. Can we work on that? I have to jump through hoops to find out who actually owns that property. And if it's development company property, the answer is no. We can't work there unless we jump through more hoops to get permission from them to do it. If it's township property, then I only have to go internally to get that permission to do that. So it's, shorten the answer to best to at least advise that you're going to be working in that area. We have done litter audits on edges of retail areas, but if it's strictly like a big shopping center parking lot, best to ask permission or at least advise that you're gonna be there. You had another question?
Yes, one more question. Are there studies that show an increase in bacteria in urban areas or neighborhoods versus rural areas, including sewage related bacteria?
Yes. Yes. Let's talk about that in just a minute. We'll get it more into that.
Thank you.
Okay, one more way, by the way, before we completely leave the specific topic of water specialist. You can also get an hour a month of training by going online to Texas Parks and Wildlife's webinars on water. Just Google Texas Water Specialist. You'll get there. As you scroll down, you have to keep scrolling and you get to the 2024 Water Specialist Certification Trainings online webinars. So this is back here just to remind you about that. There's no link or anything on here for you. It's just a reminder, but it does list the topics through the rest of the summer.
So the water special program is for the state, it's not for the Woodlands Township.
Right.
Okay.
I partner with Parks and Wildlife locally to offer this program. I actually started it because if you're not 18, there are so many hoops to jump through, it's nearly impossible for you to sign up with Parks and Wildlife as a volunteer. And I work a lot with high schoolers, especially the kids that are in APES classes. So I said, hey, what if I do the trainings? And the reason I showed you that kid's certificate is because he's coming for the litter audit this afternoon, but he's still in high school. So he reports his hours directly to me. On this sheet, if you pick one of these up with resources, completely ignore the link to report hours. It says only if you're under age 18. But those high schoolers report their hours to me. I track them. I report them to Melissa Alderson with Parks and Wildlife and let her know status of all the kids who are signed up. This past year, we had 48 high schoolers enrolled in the water specialist program. 30 of them got their hours completed to get certified. Okay. In all honesty, some of them were just there. But that certification looks so good on your college application resume, especially if you're interested in studying anything related to the environment. And I keep saying to the kids, if you do the volunteer time to recertify, how much more commitment does that look on your resume? Of those 30, probably 10, the minute they got certified, I never saw them again. Okay, that's okay. Because I don't care what their motivation is. I don't care what your motivation is. I don't care. If you're here and we're talking water, just like with Michael, maybe some of it by osmosis will seep into your brain. And you'll know a little bit more about water than you did before you got here today. I am all good with that. And you know what? When you spend an hour and a half or 2 hours sorting and counting trash to create a litter report, picking up the litter, spend 30 minutes, spend an hour picking up litter, and you go home and you say, I went and worked with a group and we picked up litter today. Oh, that's nice. You spend an hour and a half, 2 hours, and you go home. You are not going to believe what we found when we were sorting and counting litter today. And a conversation starts. I don't care who you're talking to. Talk about water issues. Talk about water issues. Talk about what you saw, what you did. The only way we change behaviors is to make it socially unacceptable to do the wrong thing. Okay, well, no, we're not gonna shame anybody. We're gonna be models. We're going to exemplify the actions we want others to take. What does that mean? That means I gotta work pretty hard so that when I'm out there, you should see me. I walk through the shopping center parking lot to go to the grocery store. I'm picking up trash. People look at me like I'm crazy. But you know what? I'm picking up trash. And maybe not. The next time they're walking out of the store and their receipt blows out of the bag, maybe they'll pick it up instead of leaving it.
Yeah.
Can't hurt, might help. Model the behavior that you want people to take action and do on their own. Model that behavior. So spend an hour and a half, 2 hours sorting litter and then go talk about it. I will love you forever if you'll do that.
And you get hours?
Yeah.
You know, let your conscience be your guide, Ruth. Melissa may knock you down for that. Yep.
You may actually find some rewards. I know that I had to pick up litter around the bar at night for a while when I was valeting as a second job. The largest bill I ever found was $100.
You know, we have found money from time to time. Usually it's coins, occasionally it's been a buck. The largest single amount of cash we ever found doing litter audits was $12. But you know, it's
Yeah.
$12.
I always find money.
Yeah.
So maybe I should do it.
I'd just like to know if you know if there's any truth to, I was going to meetings for the Cypress Creek watershed at some point, and all the water treatment plants, seem to point at apartment, complexes a lot for dog waste issues. And I wonder if that's actually, yeah, so that is true.
Yes.
Is there any kind of storm drain program that's separate from that, or how does that work? Sorry to put that, I'm just curious.
So I'm just gonna say this, people do what people do. Another woman I told you earlier about encountering the woman on the pathway. Another woman I encountered. She wasn't quite as old as me, but she was old enough. And I said, ma'am, may I give you one of these for your dog's leash? And she said, I don't pick up my dog's poop. So I tried to engage her in a little conversation. I'm just curious why, because it's kind of a problem in our waterways. I don't pick up my dog's poop. I'm not picking up my dog's poop. People do what people do. Pick your battles. You can try. You can try. But at some point, you have to decide whether you're wasting your time. So yes, apartments are really nasty dog food places. It's like, I don't pay for this place, you know, I mean, this isn't my property, why should I care? Those are gonna be, some of the places will be hanging the door hangers that says, hey, you're helping add to a problem.
What do those companies that have popped up that say they'll come pick up your dog, there's a bunch of them out there now.
Yeah, there are.
What do they do with it? I've never gone through that.
You know, Tom, I'm kind of afraid to ask, but hopefully, since they're picking it up, they're putting it in some kind of container that goes in a trash can somewhere. I mean, on the other hand, I was down at Spring Creek one day doing my water testing and, one of those big trucks that sucks up out of septic tanks rolled up and started. Oh, yes. People do what people do.
It
You-
shouldn't be illegal for them to do that.
It is illegal, but somebody's gotta be there to see them, take their picture and report it. I mean, just because it's illegal doesn't stop them from doing it. And there's no repercussion unless someone reports it. So when you see it, report it, but
So, yeah, obviously, this area has experienced tremendous growth over the years and, you know, sounds like you've been involved in this for some time now. What type of trends are we seeing as far as waste in our water? There's a lot of education here. Are things improving or are things just maintaining?
let's talk about that. Let's talk about that next. How about we talk about that next? Tom mentioned, no, who was it? Diane mentioned, somebody mentioned Cypress watershed protection plan. You mentioned.
Yeah.
Well, we're right here where we sit, we're in Spring Creek watershed. It was my privilege to serve on the steering committee for, the Spring Creek watershed protection planning. We submitted that proposal to TCEQ. I think it's been just short of 2 years ago. EPA has now, they've passed it on to EPA. It has been approved. On April 29, right here in the Woodlands at South County Library on Lake Robbins is the first meeting to talk about planning for implementation of the approved watershed protection plan for Spring Creek. The same thing in the same meeting is, Cypress Creek and one other, Lake Creek, I think. All three of those water protection plans have now been approved by EPA. And so it's time to talk about implementing the measures that each watershed protection plan proposed to resolve the problem. Key among them, installing storm drain markers. Giving out dog waste bag dispensers. Things like that. So if you want to come to that meeting, they didn't send a link. So I had to jump through hoops to go there as though I were registering to attend that meeting and come up with this little shortened link, but you'll just have to write it down or take a picture of it and actually type it in. But here's a couple of the flyers about that meeting. There's one in Conroe and one, I did put my glasses on, somewhere else, Spring. So if you are interested in finding out or participating in the planning for implementing our watershed protection plan, look at this sheet that's back here on the table and take a picture, whatever. Sign up and show us. It's 3:30 to 5:30 on the 29th at the South County Library here in the Woodlands. Would love to see you there, every one of you.
Do we get hours for that?
You would get
More than 10?
volunteer hours for attending that, yes. So, good news, bad news. Good news is we have data. Bad news is it's not good data. So take one of these and one of these and pass them on until everybody who wants one has one. I was originally told only 20 people had signed up to show up in person, so you may have to share with a friend.
All these numbers fill up. Well,
Yeah.
Now, when you say only 20 people signed up to show up in person, and that's to.
I got a note from, can't remember who, that said only 20 of you had said you were gonna show up in person.
Today?
Yes. So,
Meeting.
so I only brought 20, so.
That's what I was thinking.
It was later updated, but I'd already left from the office. I didn't have access to make any more copies.
Terry, I think the information training with the mentors and they would contact the mentee.
It's okay. I'm just telling you why you may not have a copy.
Can we get, when you go somewhere, like the summit file and maybe send it out that way?
Sure.
Monday, I'll be gone until September. I got an internship backpacking. I'm super excited. I'll be in Lander, Wyoming with the National Religion School, and I'll do a little bit of time in Utah, and I'm really hoping that I get to go to Alaska.
Wow. So all of these pages are just for Bear Branch, Panther Branch, Lake Woodlands. All of this data. So instead of having to look through all of this, and where I'm flipping this and you see yellow highlighter, that's every instance when the level of bacteria was above standard
And the drinking water?
in the creek water. So Texas Commission on Environmental Quality in their infinite wisdom has set 126 parts per million of E. coli, which is the bacteria we test for, because it's the easiest to test for, it's the cheapest to test for, and it's a great indicator that there is other bacteria present. So they say 126 parts per million is a safe level for the average healthy adult to come in contact with water that has 126, up to 126 parts per million of bacteria, E. coli in it. And you shouldn't get ill.
126 spots per what?
Million. So on this sheet, oh, we had some left. So on this sheet, I must have added some as a insurance.
I'm gonna take those back from you.
So on this sheet, what you'll see is these are the segments and they're not listed in site number numerically. They're listed in upstream to downstream order. So in Bear Branch, this is above the confluence. If you look on your big map, you see Bear Branch over here. Bear Branch is here. And it converges with Panther Branch that runs down through Lake Woodlands and down and converges with Spring Creek. So in Bear Branch, above the convergence with Panther Branch, with Upper Panther Branch, between 2002 and 2022. These are professional water quality monitors. These are hired by HJC or SJRA. They do quarterly tests. And the sites, if you want to correlate the site number on this sheet, you can look at the map and see which sites these refer to. But they did 81 tests. And of those 81 tests, 45 had above standard results. The standard is 126. So 56% of the tests had bacteria levels that were too high.
Oh my gosh.
So I said, okay, we've been talking about dog poop for a couple of 3 years now. Is there any chance we're making any headway? As you can imagine, there's this time lag involved where the monitors go out, the professionals or the volunteers, they go out, they do the test, they report it in, it's all quality assured first, then it gets posted, then it gets collated, then it gets, reviewed again, and then it gets published. So the most recent data we have is for 2022, through the end of 2022. That's the most recent data set we have to refer to. So as you see then, between 2020 and 2022, 14 of those 81 tests were done in that time period. 6 were above the standard, which is 43%. I don't know about you, that doesn't sound like a very good percentage to me. That says Bear Branch has a fairly significant problem with bacteria.
So how does that, if there's fish in these streams, can we still eat this fish? Is that problematic?
In case you didn't know, every single waterway within the boundary of the Woodlands Township is catch and release. You are not supposed to eat the fish from any of our waterways. And guess why?
Guess what?
I have personally seen,
You can.
this guy and his little kid, and they're down there fishing in one of the ponds, and they are putting the fish.
Where do you
in a
get these
cooler.
reports at for other parts? Cause I don't fish up here, I don't live in this area, but like, how do you get these reports for the other waters that I have been eating the fish out of?
Okay. 85% of all 191,000 miles of waterways in the state of Texas are listed with TCEQ as impaired. Don't eat the fish. I'm just saying. You do what, you do what you do, but don't eat the fish. Somewhere here I have something.
Fry that catfish real hard.
So TCEQ released the draft 2024 guidance for assessing reporting surface water quality in February. This data was just released in February that I'm showing you today. So if you go to TCEQ website and do a search for 303D waterways, impaired waters are in the 303D list. Waters of concern are listed in the 305B list, but there's an integrated waterway assessment for 303 and 305. You want the integrated waterway. And then what you'll need to do is know where your waterway is.
I have a question about the waterways. So if it's a lake, that's not considered a waterway. So the places that the state stocks, these lakes, we can eat those fish because it's not from some.
All right, let's take a look at this before I answer that question. Let's take a look at this sheet.
Yes.
Bear Branch comes along, and even in the last 3 years, it's 43% out of compliance, and it converges with Upper Panther Branch. Let's look at Upper Panther Branch. Above the drainage channel, now, if you look closely at this map, Upper Panther Branch, right here, see this funny little triangle shape right above where Bear Branch runs into it. That's a huge drainage channel that runs in a V from two different large neighborhoods and runs into Panther Branch. So Upper Panther Branch, above that drainage channel, they did 80 tests. 37 of them were above standard, 46% impaired. In the last 3 years, they did 11 tests. 7 of them were above standard. It's 64%. And then below that drainage channel down to the dam that creates Lake Woodlands, 81, 37, 46, 12, 3, 25. Okay, wait a minute. In the last 3 years, that number looks a little lower.
You can see 16632.
Not related to the pandemic at all. Could be.
Could it be related to the drought?
Okay, did we have a drought during that time? And when does the bacteria get into the waterway? When it rains.
So hold on, wait, okay. I'm a little lost. The first column is the same, it's the first 3 years?
This column is from 2002 to 2022. It's 20 years of data. The second yellow highlighted column is just the last 3 years. I wanted to see, compared to historically, are we showing any improvement in just the last 3 years that we've talked about dog food?
Why are they doing so many fewer tests?
Okay, Houston
Oh, okay.
Houston Galveston Area Council covers 13 counties in a region surrounding Harris County. They have two professional water monitors.
Wow.
There have been a few times in the historical data where they didn't even get there that quarter. But they're pretty good about showing up once a quarter at waterways within that 13 counties.
You tested for E. coli, right?
Testing for E. coli.
Yeah, I was wondering about the correlation with rain, right? And
With what?
because a lot of this is water that just drains out, stormwater drainage, right? When you increase in rain, typically, those levels go up, and when it dries,
Exactly.
it goes down.
All right, let me show you this again.
There's not a huge improvement. You see, I don't understand this.
So here is all the data from all the individual tests. Where you see yellow highlighters, it's above compliance. Where you don't see yellow highlighters, it's not. The timing of the test. If you can test within the first 2-3 days after a fairly significant rainfall event, enough rainfall that there was runoff, that's when you get the yellow highlighter. So it's exactly that. When did they test? They test on a schedule because they've got 13 counties of waterways to test. They test on a schedule.
So I don't see an improvement.
Yeah.
Well,
It's stable. It's coming.
I think that was sort of the point, is that we're not seeing a big improvement.
Okay.
But here's the thing. Then we get to the Lake Woodlands Dam, starting there where it's on the left where it says Lake Woodlands. Those next four are all Lake Woodlands. When you get all the way to starting at the top, you see the numbers are higher. By the time you get to the bottom, the south end of Lake Woodlands, the number has dropped down some. that old saw, dilution is the solution to pollution. Lake Woodlands is a fairly significant sized lake. All kinds of stuff is pouring in from Upper Panther Branch into the lake. But it's a fairly sizable lake, so it's diluted by the time it comes out into Lower Panther Branch. The numbers are probably a little lower. But then you look at the south end of the lake, where it runs back into becoming Panther Branch again on its way to Spring Creek. And the number jumps from 23% back up to 64%.
Any thoughts on what the predictions on what the effect of the houses being built on the island on the east side and the Ritz-Carlton being built there on the northeast side of the lake?
Well, I'll also point out to you, Michael, that after you come out of Lake
Yes.
Woodlands, as you head down towards Sawdust, you pass through. And what are they?
Oh, the groundwater to water their.
There's pathways all through the golf course and it's, everything is washing away. They built that huge new townhome complex. They're building another huge townhome complex. Hey, it's not my property. Why should I pick up the ducks? But okay, guys.
Give me your name and I'll send you mine.
So to get to water quality, we need to know a little bit about water. I mean, if we were gonna test, we can do physical assessments by observation, we can do chemical tests, we can do biological tests. We need to know a little bit about what water does all day and how water works and why it works that way. Michael volunteered to talk to you a little bit about one of the physical properties of water that ends up making it very useful in many ways. So, Michael, why don't you tell us what you have to tell us?
Go out there.
Sure. That way you get to be the person in front of the owl for a while.
There's a saying that water attracts water, and that's what this little demonstration is about, and information. I'm gonna get my notes. I'm gonna start this with, I'm a 40-year sales guy in IT. So there's probably everyone in this room is smarter than me about this stuff to begin with. Except what Terry was talking. But you had to work hard to do that. So as I said, water attracts water. What does that mean? There's science behind it, and then I'll talk a little bit about so what. We heard about E. coli and heavy metals and dog poop, and it all ties together, sadly. Water is an interesting molecule. Little H2O.
Want to stand right there.
Right.
There you
And over here. It is interesting in that it has a positive and a negative charge on either end of it. And because it has a positive and negative charge, other water molecules are attracted, much like magnets. I'm using some very basic unscientific terms here. So again, please stop me when I say something wrong. I will not be offended at all about any of that. Water attracts water. Water has this property of cohesion. It likes to be together. You see cohesion. An example, kind of in the world example. Have you seen those fountains that will shoot out the stream of water and land at the other end, and the water will come back the other way? And the water stays together, almost like a piece of something. Water wants to stay together. Same way, those of us that are old enough that remember drinking water out of the hose before that killed you. The water would come out and you could get a drink. You didn't have to you could put your mouth on the hose, but you didn't have to. So think about cohesion as we go through this. It wants to be attractive to each other. It's here. It makes it sticky. Those bonds are very sticky. That's there. I mean, if you want to hear the positively, okay, here's the science part I have to read. The positively charged hydrogens of one water molecule are strongly attracted to the non-bonding electron pairs at the negative oxygen end of another water molecule. Yeah. Leave it. Water loves to find itself. It is attracted to itself. So, some concepts out of that. That bond, this unequal sharing, because of the electrons involved, one's charge is slightly stronger than the other. It will attract it to itself before it'll attract to other things. But other things, the second concept, there's a term that water is a universal solvent. It's really good at dissolving a lot of things. And I mean a lot of things. Good things, sugar, salt, and bad things like iron and PFAS chemicals and arsenic. So it's a really great solvent for doing that kind of stuff.
What were some examples of the bad things?
We'll talk a little bit about PFAS, PFAS. It stands for, oh, I knew something. Okay, I'm gonna try this. Just because. I'll find I have to read it because I couldn't memorize.
Arsenic is an easier one.
Arsenic's easier, yeah. Fluoride,
Thank you.
nitrates that you find that's in there. But I want to talk about PFAS a little bit because it's kind of the deadly chemical du jour that's out there. It's gotten a lot of attention lately. As a matter of fact, Terry just gave me an article from the EPA has now come up with literally billions of dollars of funding to work on the elimination of PFAS chemicals in the environment. And they're awful chemicals. And they're, I get a little sidebar on the PFAS. They're called recalcitrant chemicals, which means they're here forever. You can get rid of them. It's very costly. Hence the B in billions that they're gonna be spending on it to try to get it out of the water. And they do things like a lot of the other chemicals we've heard about. They could cause high cholesterol, as if almost any of us need help in getting high cholesterol. Harmful to pregnant women, women wanting to get pregnant. They're, well, let me find it. I have a whole list, more than I could memorize. They are being studied for carcinogenic effects related to it, to the point where the EPA has said the non-measured or non-moderated level of PFAS that is acceptable in the environment is 0. Not 126 parts per million. The acceptable level is like 4 parts per trillion.
Effectively 0.
Effectively 0. And the other good news, as I said, is they don't go away. There's no biological microbial processes that break it down. I mean, they've even found yeast now that will break down a lot of chemicals. They're having a hard time finding any way to break down PFAS, and it's been found in our water.
You were gonna find it and say what it stands for. I'm waiting to hear
You're,
that.
you're waiting for him to embarrass myself
I know.
to
but
say this.
It's unpronounceable.
Okay. See. There's both per and poly. I'll use a polyfluoroalkyl substances. It's a mouthful.
Yeah.
And there are two primary culprit, yes.
Is EPA a government agency or a private agency pretending to be a government agency, like the Federal Reserve Bank?
That is an opinion question that I only have facts. I'll let you try one opinion to it. You'll hear PFOS and PFOA, perfluorooctanic acid and perfluorosulfonate. So those are two of the more common forms of PFAS. And you're wondering, where's all this going here? Why water attracts water? Well, we have a little demonstration we're gonna do. As Terry mentioned more than once today, you gotta keep it pretty simple for the sales guy. You know, don't give me all the terms. Keep it simple. So we're gonna do a little demonstration with a reward at the end if you want it. Yeah. Yeah.
See how that works?
Yeah. More for me. Here, I'm supposed to move over here. I know.
Unless the owl can see the demo better.
I'll move the demo over and stick it in front of the album. Here.
And here's one. You need one for them.
I should make Janet come up here and
Me?
be my assistant.
I can be your
Okay.
assistant.
Yeah, okay, Ruth, come on.
All right, there she goes.
We are budding water specialists. I think that's a good spot. We just.
Okay.
This in front of me. So the
Ready.
camera can get the counter for the.
Oh, okay.
I'll just move this out of the way, so we're not.
So for you, Ruth,
For the water,
it's mineral oil,
small amount,
water, some alcohol, not much,
half, no more
yeah,
than
about
half,
half,
no more than half.
in there. Could be maybe a little, oh, that's fine.
Little more?
Yeah,
About half,
Half of this?
about half
about half of that.
full,
Full, yeah.
only in one.
Oh, only one.
Oh, here. That one, yeah, a little bit of this, a little of that, and a little water in each.
In each of that, not everyone.
It's gonna be an experiment.
I hope we have enough cups now.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah, wait a minute.
there you go. Now, Ruth, after you've done this, you become qualified and, you'll get called on to, and I'll hold these up as we go.
So do we know, because this was water?
What type of water are you using?
It's out of my tap at the house.
Tap water.
I'll take it out.
No, I'm thinking it's not that water, that's not, that's.
Yeah.
I'd be able to smell it.
So this is the alcohol. Each of those papers. So there's mineral oil, there's alcohol, here's water. By the way.
I can do
Putting sugar in it.
Kind of scary.
Yeah, is there gonna be a flame?
Should I be this
Yeah,
close?
yeah.
Do I need goggles?
You remember the Cuyahoga River?
So M&Ms,
Really, the only the red color.
candy coated, I use the red ones. Just as a sidebar, one of the reasons I use the red ones. A recent diagram I found. Did you know? The US version of M&Ms continue to use red 40 Lake dye. Which, when you go buy the UK version, or M&Ms anywhere else in the world, does not use that because it's been banned for most of the rest of the world. So enjoy your
Red
M&Ms that are there. Now, I don't know if you can see. Remember, this was the alcohol, yes?
No, that's mineral oil,
Mineral
alcohol in the
oil,
middle.
alcohol, water. Nothing happening, tiny bit, maybe that's a reflection. The M&M is starting to dissolve.
Alcohol has a very small amount of water in it.
The water based M&M has quickly dissolved and is now a light pink.
Why is it?
Why? The sugar is in there.
It's dissolved.
What else is part of that coating that's there? What, did somebody say? Water.
Water likes water.
Water attracts water. And much like, for those of you that either have ever been in a classroom or a teacher, it's not the good water that influences the bad water. You know, it doesn't, the clear water doesn't bind the red more closely to the M&M. Water is attracting water that's there. So now when you start thinking about any chemicals that are going into our water, if they're coming out of Panther Creek, they're heading into Spring Creek or wherever they're going, they're headed into where you're gonna go fishing. They're headed into where the Iron Man wanna go swimming. And some of those include, and so let's get, I talked about PFAS a little bit. There are some others. It's a test. Fluoride, soluble, yes or no? Yes. Okay. And if you have more than 1 milligram per liter of fluoride, it can cause dental and skeletal fluorosis, the discoloration that's there. Arsenic, soluble, yes or no? Yes, that's there. Exposure to high levels of arsenic in drinking water for prolonged periods. And that's the key with a lot of this stuff. You know, she talked about cadmium. Cadmium in dark chocolate won't kill you unless you eat a lot of dark chocolate. I mean, like, the chocolate, the rest of the sugar will kill you before the cadmium does. But exposure over long term, cadmium is one of those that collects in your system. Collects in fishes and system and anything in the water. Comment?
Is the arsenic coming mostly from the chicken industry?
It could be. I mean,
I think they
they
use
use
that to
that in there.
kill, yeah.
Nitrates. Well, all you gotta do is look at some of the fertilizer that's out there, a lot of nitrates in manufacturing facilities. At very high levels, it can cause what's known as blue baby syndrome, where there's not enough red blood cells. It's there. Increased infant mortality, birth defects, hypertension, and stomach cancer. It can also have some serious effects on plants. Now, you look at this, water attracts water,
You're talking about nitrate.
nitrates. Bring this back to some of the other stuff we talk about in Master Naturalists. This cohesion principle is one of the, is related to water uptake in plants. Water attracts water. Water with dissolved chemicals can also be pulled up into plants. So not just us that we need to worry about. But we are fairly human-centric here.
Oh, goodness.
Fairly-
Sorry to tell you that.
Oh, no, I'm well aware.
Is
The world revolves around us.
iron, is it soluble in water?
Yes.
Yes. It's here. And it can discolor water, it has issues with farmers. You can imagine too much iron can't be too good for you. Manganese, also see a lot of that in fertilizers. It's out there. So,
And what about CO2?
Yes.
And what happens when CO2 dissolves in water?
Carbonic acid.
Carbonic acid. Why are all our waterways and especially larger bodies like oceans becoming more and more acidified? Carbonic acid.
So short demonstration. The thing to think about is, what am I putting on the ground? In my house or in the area? What are other people doing? What water is going to run across these surfaces? What is it gonna pick up? Because it will pick up if there's, if it's soluble, water is going to dissolve that. We're gonna hear another principle of water, not cohesion, but adhesion, when we do the dissolved oxygen thing, when you have to measure, you'll see the adhesion principle where it will like to come up the sides of the tube.
And before you finish, I call your attention to, for example, the cleaning products aisle or the hair care products aisle in your nearby supermarket, Walmart, wherever. All those bottles of stuff, what is the number one ingredient?
Sulfate.
Water.
So whatever's in that water, in those bottles and containers, you wash your hair, you clean the sink, all of that goes down the drain and into the nearest treatment plant. But are they testing for and treating for everything that's in there? So where does that water end up? Where do treatment plants dump their water after it's been treated?
Creek into the creeks.
Then answer is always gonna be the nearest waterway.
A final note, and this will relate to our litter audit that is there. Some places you find the PFAS chemicals in the world. Candy wrappers, I'm gonna find some of those today. Shampoo, she just mentioned, not only the cleaning aisle, you can find it in shampoo. Water resistant clothing. And that goes back to firefighting foam also.
What?
Firefighting-
This is the PFAS stuff?
Yes.
And firefighting foam, non-stick cookware.
Wow,
All of us that have had Teflon plates all these years have been slowly ingesting PFAS chemicals. Why,
One of the properties is it's heat resistant.
it's a nasty product. Dental floss.
dental floss, why?
I don't know, I was doing research last night, I go, oh,
It's not plastic and it's.
well, that's true, it's plastic.
It's what?
It's
plastic.
plastic.
Nail polish,
Okay, I don't pay right now.
okay. Pizza boxes, some of the coatings that they.
It's
put
a
on there.
water repellent.
Yes,
So all that Gore-Tex, all that fancy,
eye makeup, all that waterproof mascara that they advertise could have PFAS
If it
chemicals.
repels water, it probably has PFAS.
Microwave popcorn bags. We're just ruining everybody's free time here. Any sort of stain resistant products and pesticides, you'll find this chemical. So,
You know, life is hard and then you die.
and then you die. Some of us will die.
Keep on doing what you're doing.
Okay,
goodness.
as a treat from Terry, I'm saying this from Terry now that I've shown you all this. I mean, I would never do this, but here's some little packets of M&M. Don't eat the red ones. I'll just leave them up here and somebody can open them at break.
Yeah, you can have, I brought M&M's.
Or if you've reached an age like I have, but something's gonna kill you, might as well do something with joy.
So M&M's for everybody. All right, we've got to clear our tables. We are not going to use chemicals with all this stuff on our tables because we may spill. So clear your spot, stash your stuff somewhere. Get into work groups. I have 10 test kits. So some of you turn your chairs around and find a way to partner up.
I'm wearing a water jacket right now.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Wait, there's a
Yeah.
question from the.
Wear it when you go
For the Zoom.
fishing.
Huh?
Wear it when you go fishing. I can't hear you. I can't hear you. What did she ask?
Best fertilizer to use. Compost.
Starting in the yard. Natural, native plants.
Exactly.
If we have time, we'll talk about that a little bit more when we talk about invasives. All right,
Did I say that and we're back here?
Debbie, you wanna go pass around? Make sure everybody has their glasses. Yes, pass down, pass around. Oh, pass it down. Here you go, down and around. Pass them around. Yeah, each group, however many of you are gonna work together, keep one kid. I got 10 kids, figure it out. Everything stays together in one kit for your group, pass down the kids to others. Pass them down. Every work group have a kit now. Oh, yeah. So all of us are turning around. Everybody needs to have a couple of minutes out. Oh. We're watching that.
There's only one person that I would trust. That's why I like to think of this, so like. And then.
And it's not.
Still like looking at like the statutes.
Are y'all?
Yes.
Oh, it's
Okay.
I'm a stroller.
Listen up, guys. I have small gloves and I have large gloves. KTV sends them to me. That's what they send me. If you have small hands, you might want small. Otherwise, take a couple of gloves. We do not put them on yet, but, pass around the boxes of gloves. Yeah. Yeah. What is it? Ruth. Couple of gloves. If I stand here, is this okay for everybody? If I stand here? Yeah. Everyone needs a couple of gloves. At least you at least have to have a glove for whichever hand you use. Here's the thing. So this is gonna be a bunch of steps. It's a lot of steps. Within your group, I want every single person to participate. So as we go from step to step, the next person and the next person needs to take a turn doing it, okay? And don't make me come over there. Okay.
Gary, you give
You know, right? So Texas Stream Team is a volunteer organization. It's kind of under the umbrella of Meadows Center up in San Marcos. Yeah.
Which one do we have? You know, the small one?
Those are large.
It'll be all right.
Don't put the gloves on yet.
Okay, please take all those.
So I'm not gonna talk over y'all. When you're ready, I'll be ready. The Texas Stream Team is a group of trained volunteers. You must attend a training. The training consists of 3 parts. 2 of them you do on the same day. It's a long day. So in the first few hours of the day, you learn the steps to do each of the 6 different things that are in the parameters that you will do ongoing. If you want to be a Stream Team water quality monitor, we ask you make a 2-year commitment to test at a waterway once a month. Life happens. Please try to test at least 10 times a year. And please try to test for 2 years. A 2-year span of regular testing at the same time of month, the same time of day, gives us a really good baseline for that specific spot on a waterway. And as we talked about earlier, that time of day, time of month is kind of important because it's a snapshot. It's that 5 minutes that you collect your water sample that you're gonna produce data for. So if you go at 9 in the morning and you test, and the next month you go at 3 in the afternoon, are you gonna get the same numbers? And we're gonna talk about that a little bit while we do this test. And a lot of smaller water treatment plants, little mom and pop shops, are those that developer goes in, he builds a neighborhood, and at the back of it near whatever drainage channel or waterway is a little water treatment plant. And most of them don't have anybody there on a day-to-day basis. They come in a couple of times a month to check the computer. So it's a computer-run operation that typically at X date or X day, they release their effluent. So it's helpful if you always test about the same time of month. It's not like on the 25th. It's more like 3rd weekend, something like that. Just so that you're there about the same time of every month. So if there's a effluent release from a treatment plant or something, you kind of always are in sync with it either happening or not happening at that time of month. As I said earlier, 5 minutes later, the water's gonna be different. So it's doing the best you can to be as consistent in where you test specifically, what you test specifically, to give us as close a baseline as we can get. That's all we can do. There are monitors, you know, I got certified as a monitor in 2004 and certified as a trainer in 2006. So yeah, been doing this a while. There are others who have been doing it even longer than I, but we ask for a 2-year commitment if you can. So things that Stream Team monitors test for, notes you make on your reports is at your site, you show up, you hang a thermometer, you're gonna get a note of the air temperature. While you wait a couple of minutes for the air temperature to get steady there, you're gonna do field observations. You're gonna be looking around at conditions. Things like, does the water have any odor? Does the water have any color? Things like, what's the weather that day? Is it cloudy? Is it raining? Is it clear? other kinds of, a whole little laundry list of conditions you're gonna do for a couple of minutes, then you get your air temperature. Then we wanna know what temperature is the water. So you're gonna take your sample bucket, if that's how you're doing it. I always like to choose spots that I could literally just wade out into the water and take samples of the water right out to do my test. But in a lot of places, you need to get a sample in a bucket. So go get your water sample, put the thermometer in, and while you get all the rest of your gear ready, give it a couple of minutes, and then you know what the temperature of the water is, and you make note of that. We do tests from our sample for conductivity, which is a measure of total dissolved solids. Conductivity. We do a test for pH level. And we test for dissolved oxygen. And we measure turbidity. We can come back and talk about all of those later. But those are all things that we note on our report. Now, out there in the real world, if we were doing this for real, when we test for dissolved oxygen, you would collect 2 samples of the water, and you would test each one in turn. You make a note of your answer for the first on the form, then you make a note of your answer for the second bottle on your form, and you average them. And we'll get to the specifics later, but if your 2 answers are too far apart, you have to repeat the test. And if you repeat the test and your 2 answers are still too far apart, you have to go back and get a new sample and start over again. There's a lot of steps doing this. So there's margins for error. I will tell you that we're doing the short version today. If we were out there in the real world, there's a lot of rinsing of containers and, things like that. We're gonna shortcut today because this is just for you to get a sense of what that test involves. So I'm going to tell you what I want you to do. You're gonna wait for me to demonstrate that to you, and then I'll ask you to do it. Because why?
By watching.
Well, true. Why am I gonna tell you how to do it instead of just saying, do this?
Safety.
Some of it is safety.
And we don't know.
And we don't.
If we were doing this for real and we wanted to be able to compare, contrast, collate our data,
It has to be the same.
everybody has to do it the same way. That's the whole point of the stream team training, is so everyone is doing it the same way. There've been a couple of studies done to compare volunteer monitoring data to professional monitoring data. And as a result of those couple of studies, our volunteer data now gets bundled in to the professional. When real people who are making real decisions about water quality issues, they look at the monitors as well, because you heard me say earlier, the professionals in our region anyway, there's only 2. We're lucky to get once a quarter data in our waterways. The volunteer monitors go once a month. It's really a good base against which to compare the professionals and vice versa for consistent numbers. Had a volunteer tell me one time, Terry, I don't know why I'm doing this anymore. I've been monitoring my site for over a year and I keep getting all the same answers. Duh. You don't want to see spikes and valleys. You want the water to be consistent. I work a lot with kids, especially 4th, 5th grade up, but a lot of high schoolers. H teacher from over on the other side of the ship channel one day said, I really would like to get certified as a stream team monitor because I want to take my Apes kids out with me to do testing every month. The creek was the property side. The school property ended at the creek. And here's what I find about kids. If you're a teacher, you can hate me if you want. Historically, at the elementary school level, teachers didn't have to teach science. And so a lot of teachers chose to teach at the elementary level, so they didn't have to study science. Well, that has changed. Now we start teaching science a lot earlier in the classroom. And yet we still have teachers who, for them, science is that little box up on the shelf. And when it comes science period, they take it down, open it up, say, here's some science, and put it back. And if the kids have questions about why, they kind of get squelched because not all the teachers are really comfortable answering why questions about science. And what I see is, I've worked with kids from kindergarten all the way through college. I worked with some kids from Rice one year. By about 6th, 7th, 8th grade along in there, kids have no idea why science is relevant in their lives. They can't figure out how science can be relevant in their lives. Why do I have to know this stuff? So this guy got certified. He took his APES kids out twice and they did testing, and it was, you know, we went out there and we did this. The third time they went down to the creek, oh my God, the smell was so bad. It's like, what the heck is going on? And so they took the initiative and they tramped upstream until they got to a little mom and pop water treatment plant. There had been a big electrical storm about a week before. Apparently just enough to reset the computer that was running it because there wasn't a real person there every day. And the wastewater treatment plant was releasing their effluent too soon with raw sewage still in it. Because the teacher had gone through the training, they knew how to reach out to TCEQ. And they did that. They went back to the classroom and they did that. TCEQ showed up, fines were levied, remediation was ordered. And those kids found out how science is relevant in their lives. Trust me. If you had been that kid, put yourself in your head back at that point in your life. If you had been that kid, you're gonna remember that. It's gonna make an impression on you.
And you're gonna feel like I feel that.
After that, every time they went out to do their water testing, they carried trash grabbers, trash bags. They worked all the way from their testing spot back up to that treatment plant. Every time, picked up litter, cleaned up trash. They owned that creek after that.
If you become a Texas Stream Team Monitor, do you get to pick the waterways, like ones that you particularly care about, if they're
So the
available?
short answer is yes. Unless someone is already monitoring within about, I say, a quarter mile, then they may ask you to move a little further away. They especially look for places like, remember I showed you on the map, there on Upper Panther Branch was that big drainage channel that flowed in from two big neighborhoods. And so they test above that drainage channel and below that drainage channel. Sometimes it's a water treatment plant that dumps their effluent. They like to have tests from above that flow and below that flow. So if there's an issue that they see in the water, is it because of this treatment plant's effluent, or was it there before? You know, those kind of questions. So the short answer is yes. If there's a waterway you're particularly interested in, you can say, I would like to test here or as close to here as possible. So yes, I mean, it wouldn't make sense for you to come to a training out here, you live in the Woodlands, and they say, well, you go test water down in Galveston. You're not gonna do that. You're not gonna be consistent even if you say you will. I'm sorry, you're not. So it needs to be convenient enough, but have some meaning to you. And here's what I can tell you, the more you test at your site, the more it's your site. I mean, it's your site. The other day, Steve was talking about riparian assessment at the water lab. And he kept saying, my site, my site, my site. I mean, you own that water. And it matters to you how it turns out. It matters to you that you get accurate readings. It matters to you that it looks good. So here's what we're gonna do. So one person from each group who does not have their gloves on yet This is tap water. Would you move, can you move that up? Maybe a little further. This is just tap water. Please try let's not to get this carpet wet. And if you don't have a couple of paper towels in front of you, don't even start. Everyone needs to have paper towels in front of them. Where's the roll of paper towels? If we need more, we'll get them.
Everyone, not
We
just-
are gonna get wet. So one person from each group, find your sample bottle that looks like this. And I want you to tell me what's in this bottle right now. And what's in the air? Oxygen. And what are we testing for? So do we want to test the oxygen that's in this bottle or the oxygen in the water?
Water.
Okay, we have to get all the air out of this bottle. Here's how we're gonna do this. I'm gonna go to the bucket, I'm gonna turn it straight upside down, put it down below the water level, slowly turn it to the side, it's gonna go glug, 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 glug. Give it a shake under the water so any air bubbles get released. With my other hand, still holding this under the water, I've got the lid. I'm gonna put it under the water with the open side up. I'm gonna give it a shake, make sure no air bubbles are trapped in that lid, and under the water, I'm gonna put the cap on. When I take it out, I'm gonna slowly turn it to the side to see if there's any air bubbles in there, and if there are, I gotta go back in the bucket. So watch me do this. Listen. Give it a shake, lid in, give it a shake, under the water, put the lid on good and tight, lift it out, turn it to the side, no air bubbles, I'm good to go. So one person from each group, here's 2 buckets, take your turn, come and fill a sample bottle like this with water.
So if you're out in the field, are we not supposed to be wearing gloves if we're out in the field?
You
doing
can,
this
so
from
the
the.
reason I said don't put gloves on is 2. Number 1, this is just tap water, but number 2, once you put your hand down in there and you get water inside your glove, you're not gonna be happy about it.
But I mean, out in the field.
Carry some hand sanitizer with you. Get your sample and then wash your hands.
Okay.
Do what you wanna do. If you wanna put your gloves on, put them on.
Yeah, I mean, I was just curious because,
Yeah.
I don't know whether you're concerned about chemicals dissolving out of the gloves or not.
Here's more paper towels. If anybody doesn't have paper towels in front of them, turn the bottle straight upside down, slowly turn it to the side, shake it while it's straight up. Shake it to get rid of any air bubbles, hold it under the water while you put the cap in. Put the cap on under the water. Is it on mine? No, you took M&M? Thank you. Nobody wants
Yes.
So it's just kind of
But then it was just.
We're gonna start using chemicals.
Anywhere along.
If you don't have safety glasses on, you're not using the chemicals, period. Now's the time to put your gloves on. If you don't have gloves on, you're not using the chemicals, period. If you wear glasses to see, you don't have to wear the safety glasses over them, but I recommend them. So, as I mentioned before, I'm gonna show you what I want you to do, and then I'll tell you to do it, so don't get ahead of me. Now our bottle is full, and we're gonna add chemicals. What's gonna happen? It's gonna overflow. If you don't have paper towels in front of you, for the last time, get paper towels in front of you. It's gonna overflow.
So what happens though, when we put the chemicals, won't the air go in then?
No.
It's too full now, there's no space for the air, right?
Right. So,
Thank
we're gonna start adding chemicals. The first thing we're gonna add is the bottle that looks pink and is labeled manganese sulfate. So you might find that in your kit. Watch me do this first.
Yeah.
What I'm gonna do is open my sample bottle. And open my reagent. Now, pretend I've opened my reagent. I haven't. Pretend. And I'm going to turn the reagent bottle straight upside down. What happens that way is I can very easily watch the drops. I can try to make all the drops the same size by the pressure I put on the bottle. But it's also really easy for me to count as I drop them, because we're gonna be counting the drops. But I'm gonna be super careful not to touch the bottles or the water together, because we don't want to cross contaminate. Okay? So here's what I'm gonna do. Open it, straight upside down, and I'm gonna put in 8 drops. Immediately put the cap back on the reagent, put it back in the seal. Add 8 drops of manganese sulfate. Take turns. So there's a lot of steps. Somebody who filled the bottle, pass it along to somebody else. Add 8 drops.
Okay.
Okay.
Even though it's full.
Straight upside down so you can see those drops.
Well, you can open it.
Civil scientists unite.
Yeah, that was here.
We're doing good.
Don't make me come over there.
Over here.
Everybody done? Now let's find the alkaline potassium iodide with azide. And let's do the exact same thing, add 8 drops. So go ahead and add 8 drops.
Are there any ways that we need to be with shaking so that they're?
I'll tell you if there are.
Yeah, thank goodness.
This point, make certain you're over the paper towel.
Yeah.
Cap your reagent, put it away. Somebody tell me what's going on in your sample bottle. So we had a color change, we had a chemical reaction, right? And what else?
Adhesion is above, above, but it has.
You see some fluffy stuff in there?
Yeah.
What, you know, what we call that fluffy stuff? Flocculate. This is essentially the first step that happens when you flush your toilet or wash the dishes or take a shower and the water runs down into the sanitary sewer, goes to the treatment plant. First thing they do is mix chemicals in that cause these solids to clump together so they're heavier than the water and will fall to the bottom. So what we're seeing here, that cloudiness is the solids in this tap water. Who knew our tap water had this much solids in it? Now, I guarantee you, I'm gonna tell you to put the cap on and it is gonna overflow. You can already see that bubble above the top of the bottle. So work over the paper towel and put the cap on nice and tight. And the next step is to mix it well. But if I say mix it well, are all of you gonna do the same thing? No. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna invert the bottle 25 times. 1, 2, 3. So invert the bottle 25 times.
I'm gonna get it. I ain't gonna be dirty.
Now, the whole point of those chemicals was to make the solids clump together. So what'll happen is they'll begin to fall to the bottom. And what you'll be able to see is up here above the shoulders of the bottle, you'll be able to see that it's getting clear. Pick up a piece of white paper somewhere, and if you'll do this, put the paper out about arm's length, put your back to a light source, let the white light bounce back off the paper, and it's a lot easier to see. If you're looking at it down like this, it's really hard to tell when it's gone clear. So you want to lean down and see how long it takes for that to clear at the top down to at least the shoulders of the bottle. You can see mine. You can see mine, how clear it is up at the top. It's almost down to the shoulders.
Oh, yeah. So just a little bit more time, it'll just continue to
It'll,
settle?
all those solids will continue to fall to the bottom. So when yours looks about like this, yeah, like fish, yep. When it looks about like this, that one's good. What we're gonna do is make absolutely certain that it's mixed well. We're gonna do this again, 10 times, 10 more times. 1.
I think you're.
Okay, this time, we're gonna let the solids settle again. When the solids have settled below the shoulders of the bottle, we're gonna add the next chemical, which is sulfuric acid. I'm gonna tell you exactly what I tell the 5th graders. This is sulfuric acid. It's a fairly weak sulfuric acid, but you don't want it in your eyes. You don't want it on your skin. I always tell the story, was doing this with 5th graders. And this one little girl, I can't get it open, miss. And as I leaned over to take it from her, she finally got it to break and she was squeezing it so tight trying not to get the lip. She squirted sulfuric acid all over my shirt. Okay, we'll see. When I took it out of the wash, full of holes. I mean, full of holes. So you don't want it on you. We're gonna open it. We're gonna use it safely. You're not gonna touch it unless you have gloves and glasses on. And when you're done, you're gonna cap it, you're gonna put it away. So here we are. It's clear above the shoulders. When yours is clear above the shoulders, we're gonna add sulfuric acid. How many drops are we gonna add? 8. And for those of you who are science nerds, this is a Winkler titration. The formula is about as long as this wall. So if you really want to look up the Winkler titration, knock yourself out.
What's the criteria for clear above the shoulders?
Yours is more than clear above the shoulders.
Jerry, were these solid solutions?
Yeah.
There was solution in one.
Not yet. Well, yes, they are.
Yeah, the stuff that's falling out since it's been.
Yeah.
Hey.
Okay.
You want me to?
All right.
Use of science. I think, if you have any issue, I can delete it.
Now tell me what's happening in your sample. What's happening in your sample bottle?
Yeah.
So do we have another color change?
Yes.
Yeah. And what's happening to those solids? So what does sulfuric acid do all day? It dissolves stuff, right? So here's the question. When we go to the next step of mixing this, what are the chances that that sulfuric acid is going to dissolve all those solids in there? Let's find out. Could you set us a 3-minute timer? So can somebody set us a 3-minute timer? You got that, Darla?
Yeah.
Set us a 3-minute timer. This time, we're gonna do the same inversion, but we're not gonna count.
Tell me when.
You, hang on. So cap your bottle tightly, so you don't throw it off on your neighbor, and pick it up and be ready. Is everybody ready? I'm not seeing bottles in hands here, people. Ready? Okay, start us, Darla. All right, so start inverting, and we're gonna invert for 3 minutes. Signed up for 3 minutes. Like this. Like, I don't care how you do your hand, but faster than you do. So, while we do this for 3 minutes, tell me how oxygen gets into water. Turbulence, because more surface contact with the atmosphere. So what did Mike tell us? Water likes water. Is there water in the atmosphere? So it's gonna pull water. The same thing is happening in reverse, isn't it? Water is getting pulled into the atmosphere as well. But that turbulence makes more surface for that to transfer. What's another way that oxygen gets into water? By photosynthesis. Aquatic vegetation photosynthesizes the same way terrestrial vegetation does. It puts its excess oxygen into the water, the same as terrestrial plants put their excess oxygen into the atmosphere. So later, when it's dark and they can't photosynthesize anymore, they have oxygen available for respiration. Where's the problem in that?
The fish need the water too, I mean, the oxygen too.
So we'll talk about that in just a second.
Where's the dissolved carbon dioxide?
How does oxygen get out of water? All right, so as liquids warm, they lose their ability to trap gases. And what is oxygen? So another way, oxygen gets out of water.
Sunlight. Lack of saying.
Radiation?
Dissolved chemicals, wouldn't that kick some of it out?
I want the obvious. Tell me the obvious. Fish, aquatic organisms, are they using oxygen all day, every day? And at night, when plants can't photosynthesize, they're taking in that oxygen. So here's the thing. The people in the neighborhood next to the creek, They love to have their grass really green. They
2
use
seconds.
fertilizer all the time to excess. And the way we do in Texas is if a little bit is good, a lot is
Time's
better.
up.
So you can. So they go to the big box store and they buy fertilizer, and the fertilizer label says use 1 teaspoon per gallon. It's like, a teaspoon's good, let's just dump some in. And let's do that Saturday morning, because it's gonna rain Saturday afternoon, and I'm gonna put this fertilizer down, and when it rains, it's gonna wash that fertilizer in, right?
Yeah.
So it ends up in the waterway. When you put it on your lawn, what does it do? Makes your grass grow. When it goes in the water, what does it do?
It's the algae growth.
So, during the day, while all that excess vegetation is photosynthesizing, it's putting out so much oxygen, the oxygen level gets really high. And then at night, all that oxygen is used up by that vegetation, and fish, not being the smartest characters in the pond,
Not enjoying where this is going.
goes dark. The vegetation is using up the oxygen, the fish are having a little trouble breathing, but you know, look at all this stuff I can eat. Look at all this vegetation. Just before daylight, those fish, I have been there in ponds when they were at the surface with their mouths out of the water, trying to breathe oxygen from the atmosphere because there's no more oxygen in the water. And by the time the sun comes up, they're all belly up dead in the pond. Because there wasn't enough oxygen for all that vegetation and the other aquatic organisms. So maybe could we use less chemical fertilizer on our yards and save a fish? I'm just saying.
So the pesticides that are getting down in the water are increasing the rate at what all that vegetation around the water would normally go, and then it's taking up all the oxygen.
Yeah.
It's pumped the lawns and it's pumped that area where the fish are, and so now everything's out of whack.
So you might have heard me say earlier, every waterway in our whole region, all the time, every day, is of concern for fish habitat because of low dissolved oxygen.
So just as a person who lives with a place that has an HOA that I don't like and they don't like me either, they are heavily concerned with us managing our lawn in a certain way. So how do you deal with that where these neighborhoods would, through whatever HOAs or orders are saying, like, things have got to look like this for us to be content? You can't not have like nicely manicured grass and the HOA, you know.
Senate Bill 189 passed in 2013 by law in the state of Texas. No one, your HOA, no one can prevent you from planting water-saving vegetation. So if you, unless they have a stated minimum amount by percentage of your available yard that has to be turf grass, rip that sucker up and put native plants in their place.
What is it?
Senate Bill 189. They cannot, by law, prevent you from planting water saving plants.
So I could grow, technically by this bill, I could grow native plants in my yard and let them mind their own business. They can't force me to keep.
Look it up, make sure you understand the language, and share with your HOA.
Senate Bill 189.
So here's my first suggestion, go to a ditch, find yourself some crop fruit, transplant. And start planting. There's other.
The HOA may have a minimum amount by percentage of your available front yard has to be turf grass.
No, because what Senate Bill 189 and then you have some other members that voted Senate.
I know.
I said it passed in 2013.
So organic fertilizer is good though, right? So like the fishermen, there's like a fishing emulsion type of organic fertilizer.
So here's what I want to tell you. When you use chemical fertilizers that you buy at the big box store, a whole lot of things happen. We have, in this part of the world, we have mostly San Augustine grass. It's a warm season grass. That means don't start applying fertilizer any kind on your lawn until in springtime you've had to mow at least twice. Because if it's growing enough, you've had to mow twice. That means it's actively growing. If it's not actively growing and you put down fertilizer, you might as well just go throw some money in the drainage inlet, because that grass can't use it. If it's not actively growing, it can't use it. Come fall, usually in our area, it's right around the middle of October. The grass wants to go dormant. You can keep putting fertilizer on it, but the grass can't use it. So you might as well take the money and just put it down the storm drain.
That's against.
That would plug up your. Well, yeah, put your money down the storm drain, yeah.
Put $5 in chargeable, $5 grand.
So instead of putting down chemicals that kill pollinators, that are damaging to other organisms that are in that ecosystem in your yard, in the spring, put down a 1/4 inch dressing of really good compost. In the fall, around the early October, late September at the latest, at the earliest, middle of October at the latest, put down a 1/4 inch dressing of compost.
On the
You-
grass.
You will be amazed at how much healthier your grass is. Because a couple of things are gonna happen here. Number one, San Augustine only needs 1 inch of water a week. 1 inch of water a week. If it's rained a 1/4 inch, don't water more than 3/4 inch of water a week. And how the heck are you gonna know how much you're watering? If you have an automated system, eat tuna. And take all the tuna cans, or unless you have a cat and have cat food cans, and go spread them out around in your yard, turn on your automated system for 15 minutes, turn it off, take a ruler and go measure how much water is in each of those cans and average it. And that tells you how much water your system puts out in 15 minutes. If it's 1/2 inch and it has rained 1/2 inch in the last week, that means you only need to run it for 15 minutes to come up with 1 inch of water for your turf grass. Sure, you can put down more water than that, but all you've done is made your grass lazy. If you pulled up that sod, I guarantee it's got roots about that long. That means it's weak, it's unhealthy grass, it's susceptible to every single thing that comes along, every insect, every disease that comes along, because it doesn't have a strong system. If you overwater, you don't get deep roots that get down into the soil, find those nutrients, make the grass stronger. If you put down compost on it, that compost has all those microorganisms that the soil needs to make the soil as healthy as possible. So all that decomposition and cycling of nutrients can happen. So don't put down chemical fertilizer if you can possibly help it. Use compost instead. Don't overwater. You end up with a healthier yard. You save a ton of money. You save money on the water, you don't overwater. You save money on the fertilizer you don't buy. And your yard is healthier.
When do you put compost in spring?
So about the time you see that it's growing enough, you might have to start mowing. That's when you put the compost in. If you fertilize with compost, if you put it down after the second time you've had to mow, that means the grass is actively growing. So, different places, that's gonna be a different time, but it's usually mid-March to early April is a rule.
Is it too late right now?
It's not. You can put it down there.
So you just cover the whole yard. the
A
whole-
1/4 inch top dressing. Spread it over the turf grass. That way some green is still sticking up. It's gotta be able to photosynthesize, so that way some green is still sticking up. But you will be amazed at the difference in how your grass looks in a couple of weeks. And don't overwater it. So I don't even remember where we started with this, but it was chemical fertilizers, so quit using them. So that then if you plant native plants that are good for pollinators, you're not killing them by what's in your yard. Right across the freeway from the Woodlands, there in Oak Ridge North, a friend of mine had a business. And one morning I went over to see her. There was a carpet of dead bees in the parking lot, in the street, across, I could see them in that parking lot. Zillions dead bees. And I said, did they spray for mosquitoes last night? She said, I don't know, because she lived just far enough away, she really didn't know if they sprayed, because they always spray late at night. So I called City of Oak Ridge. I said, I just am inquiring whether you might have sprayed for mosquitoes last night. Yes, we did. But don't worry, because what we spray is perfectly safe for all other insects. There's so much we know. You know, the nature of science is, what we know today is gonna be different tomorrow. If you really are doing science, you're learning new things about how stuff works all the time. And decisions we made decades ago, or recent decades ago, and today, you can't keep doing the same thing all the time, because you find out more about how it works. And that's why you guys are doing what you're doing as master naturalists. Don't go through the classes and stop learning. That's why there's an advanced training requirement. Keep learning more, keep learning new science, because every day we find out new things. And we used to think it was okay to put this fertilizer down, and we all thought it was okay to spray this stuff for mosquitoes. Okay, now we find out not so much. And here's another thing about some of the conversation we had earlier. I don't care what your stand is about climate change. Plants use some of their nitrogen, a fairly significant portion of their nitrogen that they have, as part of photosynthesis. That's how they break down the CO2 that's in the atmosphere to photosynthesize. So when there's a lot of CO2 in the atmosphere, they have to use more of their nitrogen reserves just to be able to photosynthesize. Okay, fine. But what about things like the flowering plants that solitary bees, even honeybees to a degree, but solitary bees, native bees, their only source of protein is the nitrogen in the pollen. That's their only source of energy. That's how they grow and stay healthy. That's how, especially hive building bees, feed their brood over winter, is they have to stockpile nitrogen in the form of pollen to have it available to feed those larvae. If the plant is having to use more of its nitrogen reserves just to photosynthesize, less of it is going into those flowers, less of it's going into the pollen, the nectar. We're finding out that, you know, what's happening with bees declining. Well, we thought it was this, and then we thought it was that, but it's not one thing. It's like every other darn thing in nature. It's never one thing. You can't look at one thing in isolation in nature and understand what's going on in the ecosystem. You have to think much broader and understand the dynamics, all those interactions between and among the biotic elements and the biotic and abiotic elements. Everything has to have interactions, or we don't get the services we need. We don't get the oxygen. We don't get the clean water. We don't get the food that grows that is pollinated by natives. We don't get a lot of things if one little thing goes wrong. So I haven't even gotten to it yet. We're probably not gonna have time to get to it, but the other problems we have in all our local waterways, all the time, nitrates, phosphates, and ammonia. That's not falling out of the sky, people. That's that overuse of chemical fertilizer. I'm still trying to digest a brand new article that came out in Science this week. They're beginning to find that soil carbon is being depleted at a much more rapid rate than any of the scientists ever suspected, because all this nitrogen we're putting on the soils is changing the pH level, and as the soil becomes more acid, the carbon is dissolving and easier to wash away in a rain event into a waterway. And we just talked about what happens when all this goes into the water. So, yeah, talk about vicious cycles. You do one thing and you think you're only affecting this, and then you find out we've affected in a cascade all the way down to there. So let's finish doing our water sample. We only got a few minutes. Now we have to do a titration. So find a vial with a cap that looks like this. I think all of you have vials that have more than one line on them. If you have more than one line, find the 20 milliliter line. And I'm here to tell you that I don't care how you do it. When you try to pour out of this bottle into here, it's filled. So work over the paper towel, listen up. I want you to fill this vial to the 20 milliliter line with the bottom of the meniscus, on the 20 milliliter line, and don't overfill it, because it's really tough to get a little bit back out of it. So pour slowly, go easily.
If our container doesn't look particularly clean, is that gonna
No,
contaminate it? Okay.
go ahead and do it.
Okay.
So pour slowly and put 20 milliliters. Bottom of the meniscus on the line. When you put the cap back on the vial, people, make sure it snaps in place, and then cap your sample.
I have a question. So when we shoot the ball, right? For 3 minutes. And all the songs has been possible. What is that?
The sulfuric acid dissolves. This, yeah, we're still measuring oxygen that's in this. No, oxygen was in the water. What we've done is eliminate the solid in the water. Now we're just measuring the oxygen. Okay, yeah, we gotta work quickly, so get that done. Eyes on me. Find your sodium, I say thiosulfate, others say thiosulfate, I don't care how you say it. Find the bottle that's thiosulfate. This is your titrator, find it in your kit. Hold it near the tip, put it in the top, there's a handy dandy little hole in the top, and listen up. When you turn this upside down, again, we want to make sure we don't introduce any air, so we're gonna pull this down just a little bit and then quickly expel it back to get rid of any air bubbles. As you begin to pull down, you'll see there's this long rounded tip, and then there's that flat surface. That's that disc that rides on the sides of the syringe that creates the vacuum. So as you pull down, it brings the liquid into it. So what I want you to do is line up that flat surface that's on, nearest the tip, look on the side of your titrator, there's a scale. Line that up with the 0. So we've put 10 milliliters of thiosulfate in the titrator. Good.
This is what the Texas Stream monitors do monthly.
Yeah. The probes cost a fortune, so we don't get probes, we get reagents.
Second, a little bit. Push it back in.
Okay, not turning right side up yet.
I'm not a commissioner.
Everybody good? Okay, right side up, grasp near the tip, listen to me. Grasp near the tip, take it out of the bottle, put it into the vial cap. Do not touch the green plunger. So to do this titration, what we're gonna do is add 1 drop at a time. Watch me do this. We're gonna add 1 drop. We are not inverting, we are not shaking, we are swirling.
She can't reach it because it's drop, 1 drop, and then
A drop, swirl, drop, swirl, and I want to see a color change again. I want the color to go lighter yellow. The directions for monitor says a pale straw color. Okay, so if you we're doing this for real, what I would suggest to you is go to the paint store, look at the paint samples. When you've arrived at a color that is your version, your eye sees is pale yellow, find that in the paint chips. And there's a cheat sheet that you would be given if you were really doing this. It has a big white spot on the back of the paper, the point of which is to give you that white light bounce back so you can see the color. Because if I hold this out here, I'm seeing the color of her shirt, the color of her shirt, the color of the ceiling. I want to look with a white light background to see what color I've got. Let me show you what color I want.
Oh, good.
Drop, swirl, drop, swirl.
Swirl, you like my photo?
This is the color I want. Get as close to this as you can. Do not go any lighter. We don't want to clear. Try to go to this color. Look at it against a white background. Do what?
How much swirling do you do between each drop?
I want it well mixed in there. Make sure that it's completely dissolved in the solution.
It's like based on the number of drops.
We have count.
So now I've got to add another chemical. This is called a direct reading titrator. What does that mean?
To what?
This is called a direct reading titrator. What does that mean? We're gonna read the answer directly from the titrator. So anything that comes out of here, I want in here, or I'm not gonna get an accurate reading. So I've got to add another chemical. Do this. Find the bottle that says starch indicator and take the cap off because you're gonna have your hands busy. Watch me do this.
Yeah. Check it. I think you're close to being there.
I'm gonna pop this open, but I'm gonna hold it like this, so the tip of the titrator is still suspended over the column of the vial. So that if anything comes out of here, it goes into here, and I'm gonna add
8 drops.
8 drops of starch indicator. So do that.
Yeah, that was pretty like pale. Yeah.
When you put the cap back on the vial, here it snaps.
Okay.
And here's what you're gonna have. So swirl it until all of the liquid is the same color. You'll see little purple clouds in there until you've swirled it so that it's all the same color.
Did we need to read the titrator right now before we add that?
And so we'll continue our titration to drop, swirl, drop, swirl, drop, swirl. Okay, that sort of kind of looks like it went clear, but look at this. When you look at it against your white background, it's still got some blue tint to it. I gotta add one more drop until it is completely clear. Work quickly and do this.
Yeah, they're.
What is that? That was-
All right, now our titrators are the other way around from when we filled them. So the 0 is at the top and the numbers get bigger as it goes down. Guys, I'm not gonna talk over you. The numbers get bigger as they go down. So find that same flat surface that you lined up with 0 before and see where it is now. And between the numbers are little hash marks. Each one is 0.2, but that doesn't mean your answer has to be a multiple of 2. If it's between 2 of those little hash marks, figure out where it is. So what answer did you guys get?
About 7.2, 7.2.
Okay, what answer did you guys get?
7.2.
What did you get?
6.9.
You guys? Mike?
6.8.
You guys?
I think about 7.5.
7?
Are we reading right?
7.2? What number did we want?
Yeah.
Almost to 7.
Oh, yeah. No, this is all done. What number did we want?
7.6.
7.
Most aquatic organisms in freshwater ecosystems want to be in water with a DO level between about 6 and 9.
Okay.
So we're in good shape as far as the amount of oxygen, but could aquatic organisms live in this tap water? It's got a chlorine-related product in there to kill bacteria, so no, they can't live in this water, but the oxygen level is about right. As that oxygen level drops below 6 and into and through 5s, some organisms won't be able to survive there, but some will be able to survive, but may not be able to reproduce. As you drop through 4s toward 3, you end up with things like leeches that are very tolerant of low dissolved oxygen, but not much else. And below 3, you're kind of out of luck for finding living stuff in the water. So the dissolved oxygen is critical for a healthy, thriving, diverse aquatic environment. All of the stuff that changes that, all of the nitrates and phosphates and every other thing that makes the vegetation proliferate so that we lose oxygen overnight is bad for fish habitat. So do a fish a favor, quit over fertilizing your yard.
Oh, that's a good tagline.
So we're out of time. I want you to expel the rest of the sulfate into the vial. The vial and the sample bottle, bring them up here. I've got some bottles, some loose bottles. We're gonna dump both of them in there. I'll clean them up later. Open that, pour it in there. Open that, and pour it in there. Open this and pour it in there. Both of them in there, yeah. And then put all the gear back into the kit, put the lid back on the kit. If you will, bring them over, let's put them away in my box. Your gloves can go in the trash at the back. I wish we had a better plan, but we don't. And, wherever the bin ended up with the safety goggles, let's get our safety goggles back in the bin. So as you can see, water's the big stuff. We waited 4 hours and we still. But thank you for paying attention today. Thank you for being so great at work. Think about coming to some of the water labs. I hope some of you will stay. I think you're taking a lunch break and it's somewhere around 12:30 or so. I expect the rest of the group that signed up to do the litter audit to show up, so.
Is it gonna be in here?
Yeah. Well, here's what I brought you guys. In this bin are a bunch of different things. Some of them are the waste things, some are rain gauges, some are night lights that save water. There's a hose nozzle. There's some scraper, so you don't waste water rinsing dishes before you wash them. You scrape everything off into the trash. There's hose repair kits, so trying to live.